What's going on, everyone? It's Nick, and before we begin, please remember to like because it really helps out, and if you love sports, this is a place for you because I cover basketball, baseball, and football, so please remember to subscribe and hit that notification bell for future uploads. And today we're going to talk about Blake Griffin signing with the Brooklyn Nets. And yes, the All-Star game did just happen, but honestly, I don't really have anything to say about All-Star weekend. Well, I don't have much really. I watched the events, but I honestly wasn't that engaged. Last year was so much better. Perhaps because the pandemic didn't hit yet and players wanted to show out for Kobe. We know that showing out for Kobe is not something that's going to last forever. I like where the money is going for the All-Star game though, and that's what made me digress a little bit about having the All-Star game as a bad idea. Although the whole situation with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, I'm glad it didn't go as bad as it could have had the barber tested positive after the game, but it just wasn't interesting enough for me to really make a video about, so instead I'll talk about Blake Griffin to the Brooklyn Nets. Cue the intro. So, I'm going to give you my brutally honest and unbiased take on this Blake Griffin signing. Now, if I were a Brooklyn Nets fan, I wouldn't be mad, but it's not something that I'd be totally filled with joy about. I wouldn't be mad because it's a low-risk, high-reward move. The Nets gave him the veteran minimum to sign with them, so they didn't give up anything to get him, but is he really gonna be the guy that makes them the favorites to come out of the East or win the championship? Not so sure about that, to be honest. And I'll tell you why. First off, let's seriously not expect to see Lob City Blake Griffin in Brooklyn. Hey, he is reunited with DeAndre Jordan though, but seriously, we've all seen it. His past 2 knee surgeries have derailed him from being the star player that he once was. And the Clippers absolutely fleeced the Pistons with that trade. Even without keeping the guys that the Clippers got in return for Blake Griffin in the long term, just not having to pay his big contract was where the Clippers absolutely fleeced the Pistons. And Blake was still at least a star in his first year and a half in Detroit, but then the knee surgeries happened and yeah, here he is looking very washed up. And now he just forfeited $13.3 million that was guaranteed, all to compete for a championship. Can you blame him or nah? Well, he's obviously set for life unless he's just really bad at handling his money. But I'm sure as everyone who hasn't lived under a rock his whole career would know, he's never been out of the second round of the playoffs before. And this is his chance to finally accomplish that here in Brooklyn. The Nets do have all the firepower on offense with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, and they have a great fourth scoring option in Joe Harris. And I do think that Blake Griffin can be a contributing player. They probably don't want to have Blake and DJ on the floor together much, if at all, knowing it's more space and pace now than ever before. Unless Blake shows that he can hit the 3, which we'll talk about later. I could see some James Harden, Blake Griffin pick and roll action happening from time to time. Obviously, it'll be nothing like Chris Paul and Blake Griffin, as Blake doesn't have nearly the explosion that he did have back then, but I can definitely see some of that action happening in Brooklyn. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, the Nets actually imagine Blake Griffin as a small ball center. He sure as hell isn't any better of a rim protector than DeAndre Jordan. And he hasn't been a good rebounder since 2017. Even before 2017, he was only a great rebounder his first 2 seasons. If he's the 4 though, I'm sure teams will try to make him extend out to the perimeter, and if he's brought off the bench, perhaps he could be the playmaker for the second unit. And hey, he is an underrated passer. He's been an underrated passer his whole career. His highlight dunks just tend to overshadow that. The Nets actually have been better defensively as of late, but could they have been any worse on defense early on in James Harden's tenure with the Nets, like at the very beginning of his tenure? Their perimeter defense lately actually hasn't been so bad, as their switch everything philosophy has actually worked pretty well. but I'd still be concerned about the rim protection if I were a Nets fan. And as for him shooting the three, he shot respectably from three in 2019, but last year and this year, he shot horrendously from three. Perhaps he could be used in the offense similarly to how Draymond is used in the offense now, because Blake Griffin is an underrated passer, although I think that Blake can still score better than Draymond can, even now, because Draymond just really can't score very much at all these days. But until Blake can prove that he can shoot the three at a respectable percentage, if I'm an opposing defense, I would beg Blake to shoot the three. So all in all, what do I think? I think he can contribute to the offense. Yes, I did say I think that the James Harden trade could go really bad for the Nets when it happened, but at least chemistry-wise, it looks like they've been clicking lately. But maybe it is just a matter of when, not so much a matter of if, for when James Harden starts getting volatile, because I'm pretty sure it wasn't immediate for him to have problems with his past teammates like Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, or Russell Westbrook. It took time before things got volatile with them, so we'll see. At least for now though, the chemistry is not looking so bad. And we've never seen a trio like Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden on a team together where they can create something out of nothing. Like all three of their players can create their own shots as well as they can. And it's damn near impossible to guard, especially in the days where you can't hand check anymore. But they still really need a rim protector, and until they get one, I stand by the fact that this team is not winning a championship. Do I think that this year is championship or bust for them? No, not necessarily, but if this trio never ever wins a championship throughout their time together, then yes, it's a failure. They do still have next year to win a championship, and perhaps the year after as well, but I just don't think that it absolutely has to be this year that they win a championship. With Blake Griffin added to the squad, yes, there's some downside, and yes, there's also some upside. The Nets didn't give up anything to get him, and I'm sure Blake really wants to prove that he can still play, because he just forfeited $13.3 million for the whole sake of chasing a ring, and he obviously wants to have a new contract. Obviously not like his previous contract, he knows he's not going to get that, but at least he wants to get a respectable contract. So he's obviously doing whatever it takes to get that ring and to get a new contract. I still don't even really think that the Nets are the clear-cut favorite to make it out of the East. I do think that the Sixers are more favorable than the Nets because the Nets have literally no answer for Joel Embiid whatsoever, and Ben Simmons can lock up any of the Nets' big three players. And they have Danny Green, who can hold his own guarding one of those guys. Well, he can hold his own guarding James Harden and Kyrie Irving. He's just not big enough to guard Kevin Durant. But they also have Matisse Thybulle, who can come off the bench and can at least contain Kyrie or James Harden. While I would think that Ben Simmons is guarding Kevin Durant more often than not. And the Sixers also have Joel Embiid protecting the rim. Now, of course, the Nets star players are going to get their buckets because they're three of the best scorers of their generation, but I just think that the Sixers do have the personnel to at least give the Nets star players a hard time. But I'm also not backing down on not trusting Doc Rivers come playoff time. So I really do see this going either way, but I just think that the Sixers are more favorable. And I also wouldn't be surprised if the Miami Heat make another finals run. They've been clicking lately, and because of their slow start, they'll probably still only be a mid-seeded team in the playoffs at best, but that obviously didn't stop them last year. And I do still believe the Heat would have taken the Lakers to 7 games had they been healthy, but the Lakers still would have won the finals regardless because they just had more star talent, or still do have more star talent. But I won't deny that the injuries did put the Heat at a disadvantage last year, and that and also the virus held them back early on in the season. So as long as the Heat are healthy, let's not make the same mistake we made last year and sleep on them again. But as long as Anthony Davis is healthy, we going back to back, baby. If not though, I won't be that depressed. I mean, yeah, a little disappointed, but am I not already spoiled enough? I could be a Clippers fan, right? And that's not dissing the Clippers, by the way. I know Clipper fans will tell me I should be glad I don't endure what they endure, especially ones who were there before Lob City. Just ask Don Dropper. I know he'll agree with me on this, and I know he'll also agree with me that the Clippers are struggling to close out games, over rely on tough contested shots, and are a below average defensive defensive team. I am actually thinking, while I was wrong that Tyronn Lue wouldn't be an upgrade at all over Doc Rivers, I am thinking I was right about some things, like the fact that some of the same problems from last year would be a problem this year, or actually quite a lot. But how much can we really blame Ty Lue? And the Jazz, yeah, they're legit. Their shooting is deadly, their defense is among the best, but as long as AD is healthy, yeah, the Lakers just have too much star power to not be able to beat the Jazz in the playoffs. And last year, a lack of a third scoring option was a huge concern. Not so much this year with Dennis Schroeder. Also, the Lakers still have the #1 ranked defense in the NBA this year. So yeah, I still feel good about the Lakers just as long as they're healthy. And with the Nets, yeah, Blake Griffin can make them a little bit better, but their rim protection is still a major concern. So that's what I think of Blake Griffin going to the Nets. Also, I just created a Patreon. I will leave a link in the description if you would like to donate to that. And I plan to cover more sports history than current events, as I've been doing on this channel since I started from the very beginning. So the support on Patreon would certainly be much appreciated. That's the end of this video. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Also, feel free to let me know what you think of Blake Griffin coming to the Nets in the comments. And I will see you next time.